jazz sounds of Ollie Davis.
Next on Black Nouveau.
Good evening and welcome to this edition of Black Nouveau. I'm Milton, Dockery.
And I'm Faithe. We're glad you could join us. This week, we'll hear from Ollie Davis, who finally steps out of the background to take the center stage.
We'll talk with Lindsay Smiling, the actor portraying Othello in the Milwaukee Rep's updated production. And we'll review the poster art of Amos Kennedy.
But first, even with the national election going on, much of the country's attention is focused on Sanford, Florida, where 17-year-old Trayvon Martin was killed by a neighborhood watch leader. Over 2 million people have signed the online petition, urging authorities to prosecute George Zimmerman for the crime. Milton has more.
Thanks, Faith. The Trayvon Martin killing has sparked a lot of outrage and discussion. This week, we'd like to examine it in terms of mental health among African-American males. Joining us are Dr. Ramel Smith and Dr. Bill Seymour, licensed psychologists. Doctors, welcome to Black Nouveau.
Thank you, sir.
Us. Dr. Smith, why has this case sparked so much controversy and outrage?
I think it sparked so much controversy, first because it's an American injustice. When we look at the way the information was collected from the get-go, it was just something that just didn't seem right about it. So everybody was saying, hey, something's not right about this. Let's really get justice for this family. But it sparked outrage specifically in the African-American family because this is not the first time we've seen this injustice done, and we're scared that it's not the last time we're going to see it.
So history has played a role.
Exactly.
You know, talk about that briefly.
Well, when we talk about the Gen of Six, we talk about Sean Bill, and we take that all the way back to 1955 with Emmett Till. Mm-hmm. We've seen this happen all the times, and people say, well, why do you bring these specific cases up? Well, these people just became the poster children for these cases. People were getting killed back in the days of Emmett Till. It's just his case was so outlandish and one that caught so much media attention. It was a way to bring attention to the specific subject. Mm-hmm. And the same way now. So what we saw in 1955, we've seen into this new millennium and into one decade well into the new millennium.
Okay. Now, Dr. Seymour, unfortunately, this incident is not common. Why does this continue to happen in our society?
I would agree that this is an American tragedy, and my heart goes out to the family of Trayvon Martin. No parent should have to bury their child. As to why this continues to happen in our country, and it seems to happen on a regular basis, it's a very complicated question. It's got lots of psychological implications, racial implications, related to how men and boys are socialized in this country. This is something that Dr. Smith and I talk a lot about in our research and work with kids and young men at Children's Hospital. What are the factors that contribute to this sort of thing continuing to happen? It's something that we need to examine, and not just while the media's attention is on it. Mm-hmm. It seems that this happens periodically. As I mentioned, we get lots of media attention, lots of discussion about how to change things, but then that attention disappears, mm-hmm. or is at least diminished greatly, and then what are we left with? The same state of affairs.
Dr. Smith, what do African-American men take from incidents like this?
Yeah, well, you see the tie on side of the hoodie,
okay.
And that's the first thing, because one of the things we're trained is, about how you look, how you speak, the things you do to minimize the possible conflict that can arise. But when we see people getting shot because they quote unquote had something that looked suspicious, this time a can of iced tea and some Skittles, you begin to think, well, what do I have to do in order to get respect? Even you talk about history, we look at even recent history with Dr. Gates, where here it is, a Harvard law professor is being arrested inside of his own home. Why? Because he doesn't look like it. So what does it teach us? It teaches us to be a little bit more paranoid, because even when we do what we think we can do to reduce the fear and anxiety, we still somehow, just by our very look, produce some type of fear.
But Doc, oftentimes when we respond in a certain way, people don't seem to understand. They may take our response as anger, but yet and still it's kind of bothersome for someone to treat you as if you don't belong or you shouldn't be here in that particular location. How do we deal with that though, Doc?
Well, you know what? It's several ways in which you deal with it. You're going to get angry, and there's nothing wrong with being angry, but you want to have a righteous anger. And so you can go out and you can bomb a clinic, or you can go out and be angry like Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. was. We have a civil disobedience. We have some method to our anger. What we do is we galvanize around this anger and use it in a productive manner so we can have productive consequences. What you don't want your anger to do is to have counterproductive consequences.
Got you. Now, Dr. Seymour, how does this affect the way parents raise their children, sir?
If you are a minority family in this country, you're going to look at this type of incident, especially if you have male children, and wonder what is it going to take for them to be safe as they grow from boys to men. And that is something that is difficult psychologically. And I know that that comes up for me in my work as a psychologist, that the issue of trust of someone like me, a non-black male, to help a family who is a minority.
Okay.
There's that automatic hesitancy there with respect to trust.
Okay. Now, Dr. Smith, we've all heard about the talk.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Talk
sir.
about that briefly for me.
Well, it's kind of like what we talked about before. When you talk about the talk, it's like what we call racial socialization, how to be a black man in America 101. Listen, son, when the police come, you look them in the eye. You be honest with them. You do exactly what they say. And we give other different directions depending on where we're at, what we're doing. If you're in the neighborhood you don't look like, make sure that you don't look like you could be a criminal. You don't look like you could be a thug. It's all of those little things what we teach you to do, how to survive in America without being beaten down physically and emotionally.
Okay, have a very limited amount of time. Is this incident only about race, Dr. Seymour?
That's definitely part of it, but I think there are other things at play here. As I mentioned earlier, the socialization of males in this country, from boys to men. What are we teaching our children about standing your ground versus running away? Is it that dichotomous, or is there something in between that will prevent violence and conflict? We have concealed carry at play here, I'm sure. We've got all kinds of different factors that need to be examined as part of this type of an incident.
Why are men so violent in our society, briefly?
Well, you know what? Because we've been socialized to be violent. Might makes right. Whoever is the strongest is the one that's most respected. So when we talk about violence, it's talking about being the biggest and the best. So if you want the biggest and the best bank account, sometimes you have to do some things in a thuggish and a gangster type way to do it. Whether it's a blue collar, white collar crime, however it is, it all boils down to being the biggest and the best. And to be the biggest and the best, oftentimes it takes the strongest.
Dr. Seymour, very briefly, sir. Is there anything we can do about this violence among men?
This is something that, again, Dr. Smith and I work on constantly. We present on it, we talk about it, we research it. We have this expression that we like. It's called, it goes like this: you fear what you don't understand, and you tend to destroy what you fear. Okay. So the first step is conversation to decrease that fear. Conversation, knowing each other, understanding, no matter what the differences are. Okay. There are always commonalities.
Okay. Doctors, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved like a tree.
Social justice is just, I think it is a part of my makeup. You know, I grew up in the 60s when there was a completely different environment in America, where social justice, where the need for justice really did exist. And so I think that's embedded in me. And my parents embedded the idea that all people are equal and that you must help when you can.
Amos Kennedy Jr. is a printing press artist with an international reputation. His posters speak to social, political, and racial issues.
Some of my best pieces, I really like things that I've done related to the civil rights movement. I did a whole series summer before last to accompany work from Alabama that was on exhibition in Italy. And they had a series of photographs that were taken during the Selma to Montgomery March, especially the Bloody Sunday. And I did a series of that, and that's where the maps came from, that project. There is still a need for justice, but I think that in the American society there has been a lack of attention to justice, and commercialism has trumped the social nature. I tell people that we have become a nation of consumers, not citizens.
Kennedy gave up the comforts of the corporate world to pursue his craft.
What I do is letterpress printing, and until the late 60s, letterpress printing was commercially viable. And so there were many shops, say in Milwaukee, that did letterpress printing. But by the late 60s, offset printing became the commercial way of printing, so letterpress fell out of favor, and the equipment became available to artists. For a number of years, I had practiced calligraphy. But the problem I had with calligraphy is I would do a very long piece, and when I get to the last line, I would misspell a word. So I'd have to start all over again. And then in the late 80s, I took my two sons to Williamsburg, and there I saw letterpress printing in a shop. And I wanted to do it, and we got back to Chicago, and I found a place that would teach it, a place very much like Redline, a community print center. And I took a course, and I tell people it's like falling in a hole. Gravity takes care of you after you take the first step.
His work stirs emotions and encourages viewers to think in different ways.
My favorite pieces are the ones that sell. So the one that you buy today will be my most favorite piece today. But I enjoy doing them. One of the things that I enjoy most is when I print, I do it with such randomness that no two posters are the same, the backgrounds on them. So what I really enjoy is looking at all the posters at once as they scattered across the shop, because there's a similarity but difference, and that is what makes the world. We are all the same because we're all different.
Although he enjoys an international reputation, he often refers to himself as a humble Negro from the South.
Actually, I'm not a Negro. My birth certificate says I'm colored. Both my parents were colored. I was born in Louisiana. And on my birth certificate it says father, race colored, mother, race colored. So that makes me officially in the state of Louisiana colored. And I tell people I was born colored, I was raised Negro, I was educated black. So I have this thing going on. But don't call me an African American, because I don't like that term. I prefer the term Negro because there's a strength in the term Negro. And the term African American, again, I think when you think of Negroes, you think of the civil rights movement, you think of the struggle. And you think of a sense of community, because we were all oppressed and we had to get this oppression off of our back. Even if you were a doctor in the South, you had certain things that you couldn't do. You were treated, a doctor with a PhD, as Malcolm X said, is just a nigger with a PhD. And so we had to, we had this unifying factor that I think has been lost after the surface struggle ended. There's still a struggle, but we don't recognize it because it's not blatantly in your face, such as there's the black water cooler, here's the white water cooler. It's more subtle, and we've kind of lost it.
His posters are not expensive because he wants to make them accessible to the public.
Art is a public thing. It is not the exclusive domain of the wealthy. That we all make art, we all are creative, and that you should express your creativity at all times. You are as much an artist as I am. Just make stuff and have fun and enjoy doing it.
Although first performed in the year 1604, no black actors portrayed the title role of Othello, the Moor of Venice, until 1833. That's when American Ira Aldridge portrayed Shakespeare's lead character on the London stage. Paul Robeson performed the role a number of times, as did James Earl Jones. Lawrence Fishburne was the first African-American actor to star in a film version, and that was in 1995. The Milwaukee Rep's new production stars Lindsay Smiling as Othello. He joins us now on Black Nouveau. Welcome.
Thank you.
Now, Othello is an old guy, or is he?
Well, it depends on who you ask. A lot of people want to, there's lines that could be interpreted different ways, and it depends on what director's vision is of the play, whether the age discrepancy between Othello and Desdemona matters that much, or how much it matters, or what the difference is. So like I said, some people say yes, some people say no. I obviously say yes.
So do you put some gray in the beard?
No, I have some grays coming in already, so I don't have to worry about that too much longer.
So how did you get involved in playing Shakespeare? What interests you about these plays?
Yeah, so when I first started, my first exposure to Shakespeare was in high school. We read Macbeth, and I absolutely hated it. I thought it was boring and didn't really understand what these strange words were. And I started getting excited about it when I started acting, and these scenes were put in front of us, and we had to perform them, and it just became alive. These were these characters, and the metaphors and poetry of it came to life. I think they're meant to be performed and seen as opposed to read. There's certainly merit in the analytical process of dissecting the language and extracting the metaphors, but they're people on those pages, and you got to pull them up. And
well, tell me about the play itself. For those who haven't read it or seen it, what's the storyline, and why is it such a fascinating play? Yeah,
it's an intriguing one. I mean, I think it's one of my favorite of Shakespeare's plays. The basic storyline is Othello is the general of this army. In our setting, we're doing it in a motorcycle gang culture, which is going to be a different take.
I like that.
Yeah, it's going to be, it will expose a different, we'll see the relationships in a different way. But the basic story is he marries a prominent person's daughter, secretly elopes, and has appointed one of his subordinates to his lieutenant. Iago is jealous and starts plotting against Othello, and doesn't turn out too well. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. So since this is an updated version, you gonna have motorcycles on stage?
That's what, Harley Davidson has been kind enough to sponsor us, which is so exciting. I mean, we have from not just the motorcycles, but the clothes and accessories, sunglasses. I think we're getting some helmets from them. So it's going to be, which is, a local industry, which is great tie-in. But we have all these great, these massive bikes, loud bikes on stage. So it's going to be really exciting. I mean, I think it's going to be a really great spectacle to see. And I think it's going to draw people into the story in a new way, and there's going to be some things pulled out of it that aren't necessarily pulled out in other productions.
Now, there was a discussion earlier in Milwaukee about offering Shakespeare to high school students who had gotten in trouble and may have been in trouble in the law, and with the law, and they said they should learn to do Shakespeare because that would improve their situation. And there was a great hue and cry saying, "What? This is a weird idea." But when you think about it, is it such a weird idea to learn this classical material?
Oh, I think it's great. I've actually taught quite a bit in summer camps with younger students teaching Shakespeare, and often in very rural poverty areas down in Mississippi. And the understanding they get of the world and the relationship between people and how we relate to each other and the importance of that is so valuable. And the heightened text of Shakespeare just lets imaginations grow and flourish. So I think that's a great idea, to have these kids invest themselves and throw themselves into these parts that are somewhat larger than lives, and that they don't get to do on a regular basis. We're in a culture where we text all the time, and we make acronyms for everything. So that we have this poetry that expounds upon emotion in our lives, that I think it's invaluable. So I think it's a great idea.
Well, we talked at the beginning about the actors who have played Othello. Do you think Othello should be played as a man of color? Was he black?
or was he Arabian, or was he?
Yes.
There's, you know, that's again, it's up for debate, and you know, that's the thing. Like there's no one right answer. I mean, I think there's enough evidence that he's a black person. I mean, the references. Black is mine own face, and you know, but there's also the interpretation that black has nothing to do with actual color. It's more of the good and bad, you know, and so
it's a complicated story. And he's a complicated man.
Exactly.
So we're going to come and see you. It runs. I'm going to come and see you.
I
it
hope
runs
so,
the
yeah.
Milwaukee Rep through May 6th, and we'll see what kind of Othello you present.
Great.
Thanks for coming and talking with us.
Thank you.
Listening to Miss Ollie Davis and Mr. Ray Tales.
Someday you come along, the man I love, and he'll be big and strong, the man I love. And when he comes my way, I'll do my best to make him stay. You look at me and smile, I'll understand. And in a little while, you'll take my hand. And though it seems absurd, say a word. Maybe he'll come someday, maybe Monday, maybe not. Still, I'm sure that he'll come one day.
Meet Ollie Davis, wife, mother, grandmother. She started performing in high school with the Black Arts Theater. She performs with her family, the Davis Family Band. She now steps into her own spotlight and performs with legendary pianist Ray Taps.
He's a piano player extraordinaire, I call him. I can remember seeing him at Sardinos on Farwell, and he plays with everybody. He's played with some national acts. He used to play with Jesse Hawk, Penny Goodwin.
Her music genre, eclectic. If she could get Ray Taps to do opera, she would sing that too.
I can't say that there's one favorite. That's just impossible to say, because music moves you, and it just depends on what at that time, what you're hearing. I mean, I love musicals. I love the plays at the, you know, the symphony. It's like saying what's your best sunset? What's your best summer day?
Did you say I've got a lot to learn? Well, don't think I'm trying not to learn, since this is a perfect spot to learn. Ooh, teach me tonight.
How do you see the Milwaukee music industry treating the female artist?
I don't think the appreciation is there as strong as it could be. I think a lot of wells have dried up, a lot of streams have dried up musically. It's real hard now, I guess, for people to take the time to get out and support live music. And it's not always just economics, but sometimes it's knowing where you can find live music. So for people to understand that there can be variety in female vocalists, and not just to have just a few, but rather it's open, to open the market a little bit more and embrace us. And there are plenty of us, that's what I'm saying, embrace us, because it's the more, the better. And it teaches children that it's not just a few, but it's for all of us.
Ollie Davis expresses herself through music.
It's like telling a story, really. It's like with anything like poetry or watching a moving movie and getting the storyline. Each song is a story within itself. So the delivery and how you feel as you tell the story, there's a different message in each one.
You know, in life things change without notice. It doesn't always give you a moment to think about it. It just kind of happens, doesn't it? Mystery times. Winter turns to spring. A wounded heart will heal. Yes, it will, but never much too soon. Everything must change. The young become the old, and mysteries do unfold. For that's the way of time. Nothing and no one goes unchanged.
And that wraps up this edition of Black Nouveau.
Remember, in the coming week, do something to expand your world. Good night.
Good night, and thanks for watching.